The Dow Chemical Company, finding the bond between chemistry and humanity.
You're watching a Nova Video podcast. When they founded the colony of Jamestown in 1607, Captain John Smith and his fellow Englishmen encountered the native Powhatan people, including the now legendary Pocahontas. It was a meeting of cultures that was fraught with conflict and war. But as this clip from Nova shows, the colonists and the Powhatan people weren't always at odds, and even shared a period of relative tranquility.
Recent excavations at Jamestown provide a surprising look at this time of peace.
I think that there were Indians in that fort, a lot more visible than anyone's ever known before. And what we're finding archaeologically is this tremendous amount of Virginia Indian material, ranging from far and wide in Virginia. Lots of arrow points and knife blades are made of stone, Indian-made beads, pottery.
Excavations indicate that Indians did more than simply deliver food. Some stayed for a while.
They have found evidence of women's activities, Indian women's activities, in the English fort at Jamestown Island.
Native people who allied with a foreign group would have expected intermarriage. I believe that sexual relationships were taking place between Englishmen at Jamestown and Native women.
I'd like to thank you.
The English never wrote about it, but Spaniards, who collected foreign intelligence about Jamestown, did.
The Spanish said upwards of 50 marriages had taken place between the groups. We do know that there was a relationship between John Smith and Pocahontas. Was it romantic? Unlikely, but we can't be sure. Some colonists suspected that it might be romantic.
Some prophetical spirit calculated I would have made myself a king by marrying Pocahontas, Powhatan's daughter.
The days of feasting and good relations with the Indians lasted about 7 months at most, from January 1608 into the summer. With the approach of autumn, the Indians stopped providing food.
English people went around trying to buy corn from the Indian people, but the Indians didn't want to sell.
More months of starvation and misery followed for the struggling colony. Many historians have wondered why the Indians stopped providing food for the English. Why, too, the English couldn't have found their own food. Today, Virginia teems with edible plants and wildlife.
You can definitely fall flat on your face here in the swamp if you're not careful.
Archaeologists at Jamestown asked Dr. David Staley to find out if Virginia was as lush and fertile in 1608 as it is today.
Well, we're at Blackwater River, Virginia. This is an impounded bottomland hardwood bald cypress swamp. Maybe only 1,000th of 1% of the original forested bottomland hardwood region remains today. And so that's how precious it is. It's extremely precious.
David Staley is a world-renowned expert in tree ring dating.
You know, the trees preserve in their annual growth rings, which can be dated to the calendar year in which they were formed. They preserve a natural archive of environmental history, if you will. They tell us about wet years and dry years. Got the Swedish increment borer. It's a forestry tool, been around for over 100 years for testing the growth rate of trees. And here I'm coring to the center of the tree in order to extract out the ring sequence. Gorgeous, gorgeous. I can say that roughly these are about 100-year time blocks. So like 1900, 1800, 1700, 1600. So this would be the late 1500s, the late 16th century, if you will, and Jamestown will probably be in that general area.
Staley and his colleagues examined core samples under microscopes, carefully counting rings and measuring their width.
In drought years, these trees would put on a narrow ring, and the stronger the drought, the more narrow the ring.
The findings solved the mystery. Growth rings from 1606 to 1612 were narrower than the surrounding rings.
A 7-year episode that was drier than any other 7-year episode that we know of in this region of the Carolinas and Virginia in the last 800 years.
This 7-year drought would have affected everyone in Virginia.
The Indians simply didn't have enough of a surplus of corn, beans, and squash to trade to the English and feed themselves at the same time. Smith's primary response is simply to take what he and the English wanted.
To learn more about Jamestown, John Smith, and the legendary Pocahontas, join us online at pbs.org/nova/Pocahontas.